Hello to all of you from around the world. I want to thank you for joining us for another edition of Soulivity Today. We're broadcasting live from our studio right here in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., and on KMET 1490 AM radio in Southern California. My name is Brian Westley Johnson, and whether you're at home, driving, or even at work, we're always glad you're here with us. We have another amazing show for you today, of course, as well as a very special guest who I'll introduce in just a moment. But first, let's get to our wonderful co-host. I'm joined today by Sheila Applegate, who's a conscious life coach and author, and the host of Consciously Awesome Living, which airs every Wednesday at noon. Welcome, Sheila. So good to see you.
Of course.
Uh-oh. There we go. I had to make sure that I got you off of mute here. Yeah, so good to see you, girl.
You too. You too. How have you been?
What have you been up? Now, first of all, what have you been up to?
You know what? Last night I went to a full moon ceremony with my friend Diane Shenandoah does it at the Syracuse University campus, and it was incredible just to bring a circle of all different types of people together and honor the moon and the cycles of life that come through her.
Wow.
How about you?
Oh, man. I wish I could have been there. Well, I was probably there in spirit, but
of course.
Was it a good turnout?
Yeah, it was nice. It happens every month, just straight on the middle of the quad, and it's just fun to see who shows up. And yeah.
I just love them. Their energy is just amazing. We've got to have them back. We've got to get a dose of the Shenandoahs, I am really excited about today's topic, Sheila, which is all about the transformational power of storytelling. We were offline beforehand and we were talking about, I was telling you guys about my mom, my birth mother, Patricia, who, she was an English major. She was a drama major as well. And she would read us stories from fascinating books, from The Hobbit to The Lord of the Rings, to other fascinating books. And I can remember as a kid, it would just take me off. The way she would read it and present it would just take me off into these magical cultures and people. And I was like, I just cherished that to my day so much. And so I'm glad we're going to be talking today about it. When you hear the word storytelling, what comes alive in your memory?
Well, as you speak, I also think of my mom and my Aunt Aggie. She was my great aunt, and she used to watch us. I think she would read to us for long times because it kept us quiet when she was watching us. But she used to be really funny. And the Amelia Bedelia series, we used to think of her as Amelia Bedelia, who it's a play on words and getting everything mixed up. And so it brings back, of course, great memories whenever. And I too believe it's a really powerful way to get important concepts across to people. So it's carried through to my career, I think, too, in some ways. Yeah.
Man. Oh, man. Well, I love that. I haven't heard that series of books in a long time.
Well, I'm kind of old.
Again, as we were talking before, I said we have a very special guest today. And his name is Drew Davis. He's a seasoned speaker and performer with an uncanny ability to connect with his audience. Now, Drew's journey has taken him through the hallowed halls of Harvard, the pressure cooker of restaurants, the grind of endurance racing, and the bright lights of stages all over the country. And so with that, Drew, it's my pleasure to welcome you to Soulivity Today. So good to see you.
Wonderful to see you too. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Man, what a life story you've had. Endurance racing?
Yeah. Non-linear, assuredly. What it looks like when you chase curiosity, it ends up sort of taking you into a whole bunch of different arenas. But yeah, I think it's interesting that bright lights gets included in my bio. I've always been attracted to moments when things are on the
Wow.
line, when there's pressure, when there's an intensity in your system. I'm hooked on it. And so I continue to find myself in different paths and different ways to get access to that feeling. And yeah, like I said, it's given me some really cool opportunities to see life from different perspectives.
Wow. So I guess my first question to you is, how in the heck did you discover storytelling as a
Mm,
craft for yourself?
That's a great question. I think there's two answers, right? There's the one where I sort of is now where I stand, I look back and I see all the things I was doing in my life. I was like, oh, the seed was always there.
Right.
Um, like a very silly example, in college, I would give a lot of toasts, which I understand sounds very obnoxious, but it was because like I would love being at a party and finding a way to celebrate someone by connecting pieces of information or stories that I knew about them and then sharing that with a group of people. And so again, it was just a little thing that for me, I was like, well, this is fun. And I'm celebrating a person and they feel good. And like, yeah, cool, very aligned. Again, in retrospect, it was like my brain was always looking for ways to build stories for people and to make them the hero of whatever it is that their journey was. The more specific answer, as cool as it sounds now, doing all that winding in my life led to moments where I was like, what am I doing? Like, why can't I find a path? Why can't I actually just settle into something like,
Right.
ugh. So when I was, goodness, probably 31, 32, I was living in Chicago and was kind of on my like fifth failed experiment. And I ended up taking a storytelling class at Second City, which is a very famous improv
Oh
theater.
yeah. Oh yeah.
And it's like an eight-week class, and at the end of it, you tell one 7-minute story to like the 5 friends you have to invite. And I loved it. I loved the process. I loved digging through my own stories. I loved understanding stage presence and how to kind of keep the beats moving along so that people were engaged. And at the end of that class, I asked my teacher, when people do like a Netflix special, when they do this for an hour, like how do they do that? And he's like, well, you're going to write down 3 hours worth of stuff. You're going to find a friend or a director to help you turn that into 1 hour of stuff. And then you're going to rent a theater and invite everyone you've ever met. And I said,
Wow.
okay, great. And so, that was like March, and then in August, put on my first show, and haven't looked back. Well, I wouldn't say I looked back, but there was a moment in time, you might remember it, in March of 2020 when stages kind of went away for a while. So
Yeah, that
another
kind of
pivot was
happened. Yeah,
born.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another pivot was born, but that was the origin of me saying, me telling stories is more than just kind of a curiosity. This is something I can do with my life.
Wow. Wow. Sheila, I'll go to you for a question.
Yeah, I love hearing, kind of the path that led you to this space. And I can also feel in you a deep sense of connectedness and looking back at your college days, this ability, like you said, to connect, but there's an element of empathy that I see in that ability as well. Can you talk about how you work with your empathy, your connectedness as you're telling stories?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, It's a very generous reflection. Thank you. So I think there's 2 parts to it. The first is actually crafting a story, and a lot of what I find myself teaching around is, yes, you need to set the scene and establish characters, and like there are absolutely some kind of like fundamental elements to a story that are important. But at the end of the day, it's what is the emotional experience of the characters, because it's identifying and describing those emotions that allows people to step into your story. And that's really where a beautiful connection comes from. And so in my own kind of writing and editing process, I spend way more time on sort of like the emotional tracking than I might on making sure I describe exactly what the room looked like or exactly how I got from A to B. Important, certainly, but again, the emotional piece is really what matters. And then the second piece for me, and one of the reasons that it was so hard to not be on stage, is because reading the energy of a room, I think, is so crucial. And learning that, again, a story is not the exact words you put on paper. It's these emotional beats. And what you want to track is like, where's the audience leaning in? And so when I go into this moment where there was a presence of anger and I see curiosity start to pull at people, I'm going to spend more time there. I'm going to feed them in this curiosity that they have. If I go into something around grief or something silly and I see the audience kind of like, meh, like I get it, but I'm not hooked. Cool. Like I will honor the element of the story to move through it, but I'm not going to overinvest the time there because that's not what you, the audience, wants to hear. And so there's this sort of just awareness of what the emotional experience of the audience is as you're telling the story, and learning how to allow that to shift what you do is a really powerful tool.
Wow. Do you remember the first real time that you told a story in front of an audience, like professionally? And what was that experience like?
Question.
So many times now.
So many times, yeah. If like, are you cool if I take like a version of that question to answer?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Because I think technically the first time, although not professionally necessarily, was Second City, so I had the 8 weeks and then the 7-minute thing, and like, cool. But so in March of 2021, I moved to Colorado from Chicago, and that was part of like a larger life transition that I'm happy to dive into. But needless to say, I was changing a lot of things in my life. And I got to Boulder, Colorado, and there was this local event called the Boulder Story Slam. And you would go in, you put your name in a hat, it gets drawn. It was very much in the style of the Moth, which is a much larger, more well-known storytelling organization. And the reason I bring this up is because, I arrived in Boulder knowing truly nobody. I had no friends, no family, no professional connection. And I was going into music, which was a new space for me. So I didn't even have a network within the space of what I was doing. But I remember going to that event and having spent, several weeks feeling rather not misunderstood, but just not known. I didn't have anyone with any reference to me, and was able to get on stage and tell a story. And I ended up winning, which is not the important point. What was significant to me is that I told a story in a way where people connected. And it was just this moment of like, Drew, you are human. Like, you are worthy of friendship and connection, and it will come. Just be who you are and do what you do. It will come. Wow.
Well, like the winning's not everything, but hey, you won.
Hey, a bonus, right? Yeah, I'll take the silver lining. I'm not mad about it at all.
Listen, I'm loving this conversation. We're going to take a quick break. We got more with Drew and Sheila coming up. But listen, just want to remind everybody that here in the United States, February celebrates the history of African Americans and their legacy, which is part of the fabric of our nation. And each day we air Soulivity Today, we will be having little clips, which we call moments of Black history, to commemorate these great American heroes. So enjoy this, and we'll be back with more of Soulivity Today with Drew and Sheila in just a few moments. See you soon.
Harriet Tubman, former slave and leader in the Underground Railroad, was also a Union spy, and the first woman in U.S. history to lead a military expedition. Here's how. After escaping slavery herself, Harriet Tubman rescued slaves throughout the 1850s. And when the Civil War started, she offered her services to the Union war effort. In 1863, she was assigned to Colonel James Montgomery to work for the Union Army as a nurse, cook, and spy. Tubman disguised herself as an aging woman and moved behind Confederate lines unnoticed, gathering information from a network of informants. Slaves traded information in exchange for a chance at freedom and sometimes cash. The covert operation was approved by President Abraham Lincoln and run by Secretary of State William Seward. In South Carolina, Tubman worked in Union-controlled contraband camps where escaped slaves sought safety. There, she recruited local informants and found out where other slaves were being held. Tubman and other spies would gather intel about Confederate plans, such as where they had dropped barrels filled with gunpowder to attack Union boats. On June 1st, 1863, alongside Colonel Montgomery, She led 300 black soldiers to raid rice plantations along the Combahee River in South Carolina, making her the first woman in American history to plan and lead a military operation. The soldiers ransacked the plantation, setting fire to buildings and freeing more than 700 slaves. Tubman continued to work as a nurse, cook, and spy for another year, but she was only paid $200 for her entire war service, and was never paid all of the benefits owed to her, despite multiple appeals to the federal government. It wasn't until 1890, 2 years after her husband's death, that she received a small pension for being the widow of a war veteran. And it wasn't until 1899 that her pension was increased, but that didn't make up for the benefits she deserved. It would take another 100 years for Tubman to get the money she was owed, when in 2002 Congress was again alerted about the pension, and soon after provided $11,750 to the Harriet Tubman home in Auburn, New York.
Hi there, this is Brian with Soulivity.com. I want to share some exciting news about our new Aspire Academy by Soulivity. Now, you probably want to know what the Aspire Academy by Soulivity is. Well, it exclusively connects you with people around the globe and who share the intense desire to improve themselves and create a better life for themselves today. There's classes, there's workshops, there's live events, and even more exclusively just for you. You see, I wanted you to have a safe space where you could grow, you can learn, and it would empower you in all aspects of your life, including your mind, your body, and your soul. So how do you get started? Well, it is so easy. First of all, the best part, joining Aspire Academy is absolutely free. Just click on the Join Now button, sign up, and begin your journey. As a special part of this invitation to you, there are some free courses that are available for you to try from our amazing roster of coaches and collaborators. It's our way of saying thank you for all of your support and being with us along our journey of expansion. I hope you enjoy the Aspire Academy by Soulivity today. Start the process. Learn more about your passion, your purpose, and how to live a higher quality life. Hey, we're back here with more on Soulivity today, where we're discussing the transformational power of storytelling with Drew Davis, keynote speaker and transformative storyteller. Also back with us is Sheila Applegate, conscious life coach and author. And Sheila, I'll go to you for our next question.
I want to say that. You know, I love Harriet. So going to you, Drew, I know that from what I've seen of your work, it's not just about telling stories for entertainment. It is about social change and storytelling as a catalyst to make a difference in the world. How do you incorporate that into your work?
That's a beautiful question. Thank you. So far, we've talked about, again, sort of storytelling externally, me taking an experience and then sharing it with other people in a way they can connect to. And one of the things I've learned sort of through this process over time is that the way we relate to ourselves is also deeply entrenched in storytelling. It's because it's how our brains are wired. It's how we've transmitted information for thousands and thousands of years. And so oftentimes when you have a story about yourself, whether it be positive or negative, as in like, I'm really great at X, or I make a very bad first impression, it almost always links back to a moment or a story that you have. And so you say, I remember when I was 6 years old, I went to this party, someone laughed at me. It's because I don't make a good first impression, and I just know that to be true. and you carry that as a part of your identity for your entire life. And a huge part of what I do is help people realize that those stories are not truths. They're fiction that we have created based on moments in time. Even if there are many examples that reinforce it, it's still a story. And each of us is ultimately the author of those stories, which means we can edit. We can go back and scratch out and cross out and find new examples and write new stories. And so both developing kind of, I guess I would say, a system of helping people to kind of go through identifying the story, mining for experiences, writing a new story, looking for examples of how that's already happened, and then going out into the world with kind of a mission or an intention of living in that new story to really get it to form in the neurological grooves of the brain. You see really incredible changes, and it works on a personal level, it works on a professional level, it works on a relational level. I think, again, I think one of the things that's challenging is when people ask what I do, it's like, depends on who I'm speaking to. Right. Because whatever that person needs, I can insert storytelling as a way to bridge from where they are to where they would like to be. And it really just depends on the space and the people in that space. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's perfect. And I completely understand. As a channel and a guided meditation teacher, that is the way whatever format we approach it, it is that retelling of stories within our own mind that will change our lives. Thank you.
I love the fact that you were talking about this bridge, right? Let's pull a thread on that a little bit. When you're helping people tell stories, right? Or you're going through a storytelling experience yourself, what do you find is the most difficult part of that process?
What a beautiful question. I think there are two things that come to mind. The easier of the more difficult things. That's not a good sentence, but it's fine. We'll make it work. Is that, again, I think, for better or worse, storytelling has become an extraordinary buzzword. Particularly in marketing and the ways we convey information. Everyone's like, become a storyteller and master the art of communication. And right. I'm not going to make any friends saying this. I think a lot of people fundamentally misunderstand storytelling as they market themselves as storytellers. We understand the power of storytelling, but then we want to leverage it and use it to make more money or do more stuff. And it can, absolutely, but we have to understand it at a fundamental level. And so what I see taught often is, again, like, focus on the details, make sure you have a beginning, middle, and end, make sure you have a main character. And I would argue, like, yes, those are important, but they're not the essence of storytelling. They're not going to get you to the point where the story is truly a bridge from where we are to where we want to be, which is what we really want to teach. The other piece is that letting go of a story is hard. If you've told yourself, I'm bad at this for 20 years and limited your opportunities or the way you live your life because of that story, it's not easy to look in the mirror and say, I did that to myself. I chained myself to this expectation that I'm not as good as I want to be or as lovable as I want to be. And no one did it to me but me. And again, like, I don't think we have space to go into trauma and where stories come from and et cetera. But at the end of the day, like, it is our choices to continue to write the story the way it is written. And so to lovingly create a space where someone can not only write a new story, but we need to grieve. We need to mourn that there was a part of us that needed this identity to be real because it explained what was happening in our life. And to confront the extent to which that's true is really hard. It's really hard.
Thanks for that, Drew. Sheila, as Drew's talking about this, I can't help but be pulled back into what you and I kind of always talk about. And that is, as we're going in through this journey of self-exploration, right? Or let's say we're trying to create our best life. It always begins with self-awareness and all the things that revolve around that, our traumas, our challenges, our triumphs, the blessings, the long wilderness walks, all that comes up, right? And so in the work that you do, I can totally see that would also be a part that people would be going through to become better storytellers, right? They've got to do the work. They've got to do this other work.
Right. But it doesn't have to be hard. It can be fun. We can release our old stories in fun ways, I think. And the more we add the story element, and Drew, maybe you agree with that, right? The more we add that story element, the more fun and the easier that process becomes, which is why I think, it's so incredible what you're doing, Drew. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Agreed.
The work creates the space for the celebration. And so, yes, like you are always moving, and it's an orientation toward joy and freedom and life and expansion. And so I so agree with you, Sheila. I want this to be fun. I want this to be enlivening. I want people to be like, wait, I get to change that? Like, I don't have to carry that anymore. And it's like, yeah, right. Like together, you and I, we can just hash this out right now. We can figure this out. We can feel into something new and different. And it's really beautiful. And as I was reflecting, sometimes people, it sounds odd, aren't ready for joy. There's a letting go that needs to happen before they're ready to really step into that place. And one of the interesting challenges of what I do is figuring out the balance between, let's honor what you're feeling, whether it is joy or sadness, and then figure out how do we move it at an appropriate pace where we don't get stuck. Because you could certainly get stuck in that sadness, that mourning, that heaviness for a long time. And again, the goal is to allow the energy to move. And so that's what I try to help people do.
You said something
go ahead, Sheila. Go ahead.
You said something earlier that made me think of that too. And what benefit, like if people are just kind of listening to us today and thinking, well, how do I apply this real quick to myself? Those things that we don't want to let go of, I always say, what are we getting out of it, right? And like when you were talking about the story of I'm bad at first impressions, like we hold those beliefs because we like them, even though we say we don't, right? They help us out of something that we're not wanting to do. So I think, I don't know, you just made me think about how important it is to look at those aspects. Why do I keep this story? What is the benefit of it when we think it's a negative story to get through?
Right. Woo. Great conversation, guys. Wow. I'm loving this. Again, I was excited for this conversation because I think there's, my parents would always talk about, when we're born and we go through socialization from our parents and this kind of thing, we write our scripts, we write these stories for ourselves, right? And that becomes our belief system. And that we can always kind of like move through and become aware of the stories we're telling ourselves and actually write new stories that become a new normal for ourselves. Not that that stuff doesn't exist, but that we can find, so astutely you said earlier, Drew, joy, really feeling joy, not just happiness, joy, which is always here, always present, and some peace and some harmony and some love and some gratitude. I mean, all that comes along with it, right? So again, thanks for being here and telling these stories. We got more, everybody, that we're not ending. I just want to make sure that we put that fine point on stuff because we're going to take a quick break. We've got more with Drew coming up. So stay right there. We'll be back with Soulivity Today in just a couple of minutes.
Do you see me kneeling on this dual roller called Parasetter? It's actually comfortable because of this channel and the softness of the special foam. It feels like my kneecaps are being massaged. When I lie down, my spine is housed in this channel, while the convex rollers massage my muscles. They let go and lengthen. There's a traction effect from my head on the headrest and my mid-back from the rib wrap, which hugs me. When I start the breathing sequence, I feel calm because my cortisol levels are dropping. Lower cortisol means bye-bye constant hunger. Parasetter is 40 inches long, and much more comfortable than old style rollers. But it weighs only 10 ounces. Parasetter, just like Pilates was, is no longer an insider secret. Do yourself a favor. Reset your parasympathetic nervous system. Defeat stress. Lying, sitting, kneeling, or standing. This unique patented roller helps everyone.
Six years ago, when I started Soulivity, my vision was to support everyone in improving their life through the discovery of their passion and purpose, so they could become the best version of themselves, to battle fear and ignorance, and create a better world today. Get inspired to live your passion and purpose. Visit Soulivity.com now.
Hey, we're back here with more on Soulivity today, where we are talking about the transformational power of storytelling with Drew Davis, keynote speaker and transformational storyteller. Also back with us is Sheila Applegate, who's a conscious life coach and author. Guys, I just love that last segment that we were talking about, the connection between storytelling and actually transforming our lives. Right? Because at the end of the day, that's what we're kind of talking about here, right? Drew, how have you found storytelling to inspire people to take action in their lives? Because become aware, right? And then the next step would be this, okay, what are we going to aspire to do, right? What is the doing part that comes along? Right.
Yeah, 100%. So again, I don't know to what extent we want to dive into destiny or sort of like purpose as it is given to you. But like, if you will recall, I've acquired a couple of nicks and bumps along the way as I have like stumbled my way through this life.
Little
And
boo-boos.
so a couple. And what's beautiful about that is that when people have questions about, what does the process of change look like? What does it feel like to step into that uncomfortable action? I can tell you, I've lived it viscerally several times. And so again, I think in the abstract for anyone who's teaching storytelling, again, we get to use story. We find moments where someone has gone through a similar transformation and journey and honor that, within the connectivity of all people, it is possible for your path to parallel this other. In my case, I feel very lucky. I get to use I statements and just explain what the process was like for me and honor that it may not be this way for you, but I can honor that it is possible and I have done it. And yes, again, I picked up some bruises and some cuts, but when I was on the other side of it, I realized that the perception of the cuts and bruises was infinitely worse than the actual cuts and bruises I sort of acquired over time.
Yeah. Wow. Is it worth it?
Oh my gosh.
In your opinion?
I
knew the answer to that. I just had to.
Yeah. I think, again, speaking of things that are not going to make me any friends. So if you choose this path, bringing in more self-awareness, choosing to change, choosing to feel more aligned in what you're doing, you are going to acquire moments where that is uncomfortable, where there are disconnects from people and ways of life and traditions that were really meaningful to you. And that's inevitably uncomfortable. But the way I describe it is right now, you may not realize it, but you're walking around with heavy weights on your ankles and a weighted vest and a heavy crown of thorns. And you've forgotten that they're there because you're so used to it. And we're so used to saying, I make bad first impressions. And so rather than do the normal thing, I do 7 side steps so that I don't have to deal with that being an issue. And we create so much resistance in life. And so like, would I take, a couple of like hits to the shin over carrying 50 pounds of baggage I don't want anymore? Every time. Every time.
Wow. Sheila, I mean, yeah. Isn't this true?
Yeah.
Sheila, I mean.
Yeah, it's such a great analogy you just gave too, Drew, because, I don't know, our world doesn't really, we've normalized the carrying the 50 pounds of weight around, right? And the unknown, which is our natural state of being, seems frightening to people. But, it's just so important there is no joy without the pain. There is no joy without fear. Like, in order to experience those emotions that you want, you have to be willing to experience the whole spectrum of emotion, which means going into that. But I don't know. I think that you can get to a point where, I mean, where I can be in fear or grief or sadness and still have joy there, because I mean, it's not like jump up in the air joy, but it's this knowing inside of me that I'm processing and that I'm going to feel better when I go through it. Or if I'm grieving and those sad emotions, um, it's because I loved someone. I had enough love in my life to feel this grief, So as you integrate all those kind of aspects of emotion into your work, I know you have you have creative outlets in your storytelling too. Can you tell us about those, like the different genres that you use in order to capture those emotions?
Yeah, 100%. So as I mentioned, when COVID arrived and stages sort of evaporated, I found myself starved because I so badly wanted to share these stories and I couldn't find an outlet. And as much as I so love and appreciate that we are on Zoom and so we can be in different places and we are now connecting, when I want to make that empathic connection through eye contact, through reading your energy, through understanding what you're feeling, it is very hard to do through a computer screen. And so I was like, okay, I got to find a different way to share these things where that lack of ability to kind of connect electrically isn't as hindered. And what I came to was music. We all walk around with Spotify or Apple Music or whatever's in your pocket. And I had a little background in spoken word poetry. I had storytelling. I was like, all right, if I can add a beat, like we can start to move into hip hop. And now I can actually start to share this in a way that is so much easier to digest. And so, speaking of some of those bumps and bruises, I was horrible. I was so bad when I started, and there were a lot of lonely days in front of my computer watching YouTube videos being like, this has to be one of the worst ideas I've ever had. And the desire to share, to tell, didn't go away. And so I persisted. And so now it's interesting. Someone a couple of weeks ago reflected to me, it's like you're taking wisdom, you're taking stories, and you're just making them very easy to consume. So rather than it being kind of, again, like this sort of heavy, very rote, like you must learn this lesson, you've added lightness and you've added instruments and you've given us a way to move our body when we hear it. And it's just so easy to absorb. And so again, I kind of tripped and fell into this new way of taking what I love to do and then asking the question, how do I help people absorb this and take it in a way that feels really good? And I found myself in hip hop.
Wow.
I love that.
Well, hey,
I love that.
I salute you, my friend, as a hip hop lover.
Thank you very much.
I mean, listen, I mean, again, what is rap? What is hip hop? It is storytelling, right? It's people telling the stories of themselves and their environment in a way that other people can get into and really understand, right? And it's got to be this evolution. And so I'm glad that you're talking about the evolutionary part of this, because I hear from people all the time that talk about things like, I was in business development. They would say, well, I can't sell to people. I can't go in front of people and talk about this stuff. Or now that I'm in media, I can't go in front of a camera. I can't speak about my life. I can't. What are some of the ways that you help people move through into this evolution and embrace evolution as a part? Because just getting through that part is just the beginning, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, what a wonderful question. Yeah, I think, well, so like, Sheila, I'm thinking what you saying earlier, and it was a wonderful reminder of like, this can also be fun. And so what I find is that when someone's going into a situation like, I need to raise money, I need to impress people, it's all me. It's all the ego. I have to be great. I have to communicate this so well. I have to be perfect. And it's like, no, like storytelling is a cheat code. It's built into the brains of every person on earth. So like all you're
Love it.
doing is playing the video game. So
Love
like,
it.
don't worry so much about you nailing it, you knowing exactly the right thing to say. It's like we're all people. We all operate again with this operating system that helps us communicate information through stories. And so you're just speaking to them in a language that feels good to receive. And like I say this as the person teaching it. This is not, I'm not special in that way. Like I've certainly developed the craft and I've spent a lot of time with it. But again, like the art of storytelling is inherent to all of us. And usually it's our perception that we need to be someone or do something so difficult, so serious that pulls us away from our ability. Like small tangent. I have a daughter. She's 6. Love her to death. And she is starting to tell stories organically. And, you know, she will draw 3 stick figures and a little house. And for 20 minutes can tell me about the family and what they did that day and where they're going and how they want to, you know, become this thing and blah, blah, blah. And like, I didn't teach her that. Like, it's just her innate nature knowing that she wants to communicate about this group of people and tell a story. And so to those that want to leverage storytelling and deploy it for whatever the reason, personal, professional, again, like remember that storytelling is the gift and the art. It's not about you being perfect or getting it right or finding just the right way to thread the needle. Like there's a lot of generosity within the art of storytelling that you are allowed to lean into.
Wow. Again, Sheila, out of the mouth of babes, right? Children don't have a problem telling a story.
I know. They're very
Especially
good
the little ones.
naturally. Yeah.
Right? They're natural. I mean, my grandbaby's already telling stories at 2, you know, and she's blah, 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 blah. And you're like, okay, yeah, yeah. Oh, really? You know, you just go with it. But they have no fear. There's none of these scripts that are in the background running yet, right? We learn those things. So yeah, I love it. I love it. I'm glad you said that. That's cool. That's cool. Sheila, I'll go to you for the next question.
Well, I guess, first of all, I love what you just said. And what I was thinking about was that when, you know, you talked about how you tell your stories based on tuning into the audience and following that wave of emotion that you're noticing through them. And when people are having trouble telling stories, it is because they're, like you just said, thinking inside of themselves. And so then you're just trying to remember the next thing and you're totally disconnect from people. So how and what ways now are you using your storytelling to connect with people and to help people and support them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's really fun now is that I'm getting to start to combine art forms. So I did a show in December and it was part rapping and performing music. It was part storytelling. It was part spoken word. It was part documentary footage, and it was part music video. And each of those are forms of storytelling, right? And so for me personally, like as me being a kid, it's like, look at all the fun stuff. Like I can alternate between all these different modalities. But for the audience, I think what I love is like, as much as I enjoy the act of delivering a story, through oratory and just sort of speaking, I know that doesn't hit everyone in the same way. You know, we all have different learning styles, right? And so I'm learning more dexterity in how I can deliver a story so that I can reach a broader group of people and help them get lost in whatever it is the story I'm telling. And so if you're more visual, if the music is what connects to you more, if the sparseness of poetry or speech is what gets to you, I want to be able to kind of reach you in different ways in different moments, because at the end of the day, my goal is so that everyone in the audience ultimately feels more connected, first to themselves and then to the people around them from having this shared experience. And so the more I'm able to draw you in, the more, again, you lose that ego of individual and you realize that you're part of this sort of shared moment. It's why concerts are so powerful, because you realize, you know, you're singing along to one of your favorite songs that has a personal meaning to you with 100, 500, 10,000 people, depending on the size of the venue. Those are core memories that people carry. And so I want to find a way to do that with storytelling. And so I think that answered your question. Yeah, just trying to mix different styles of storytelling. So again, I give more people a chance to feel seen, and to feel like, you know, what they need and desire is available to them within what I'm sharing.
Oh,
So
man.
that does answer
Okay.
it. I want to, so to me, the experience of it, the experiential aspect of it that they just receive beyond the words even, is essential to you. Is there a passionate connection to a specific, not a single message, but is there like a passion that drives it, that a message that you're trying to help people to hear? Or does that change with every story you tell?
I love that question. And I have two answers, which is technically cheating, but bear with me. So, you know, the best answer is just how powerful love is. And I think, again, we as humans love to make things complicated. And so what is love and how do I give love? And it's like, man, look at a kid. Like, just look to the children. They will teach you everything you need to know about what love is and how to love. And so what I try to have people leave with is a sense that they have received love in some form, because that's really all I'm trying to do. You know, all the work I put into storytelling, I do to make people feel good, which is a form of love. And so I want people to feel that. The second piece, and, you know, like, I keep waiting for my purpose to like really cement and be like, that's it. And it keeps evolving on me, which is beautiful and also very frustrating. But a core of it for sure is this idea of a phrase I use called salt for the earth. And the way I think about that is, you know, when you add salt to food, it's not about making it taste salty, it's making it taste more like itself. And so what I try to offer to people is a mirror of like, I see the greatness in you, I see the love in you, I see the power in you, and I don't need to fight for it, and you don't need to fight for it. It's already there. And so whenever I'm telling stories, I want people to, it's usually be reminded. It's not that we don't know, it's that we've forgotten that there is so much beauty in each of us. And again, it doesn't have to be a numb slog to go find it. We don't have to suffer en route to it. We have access to these beautiful gifts already, whatever they may be. And yours may be storytelling or it may not. But I'm not trying to make you a storyteller. I'm not trying to make you an artist. I'm trying to make you you. That's really all I want to do.
Well, that sounds like a purpose to me, my friend. That sounds like a purpose, a really good purpose. Listen, really quickly, how can people find out more about what you're doing, and how to contact you? Because I'm sure that there's going to be people that are going to want to do that after this show.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. So I know you have the website pulled up, which is just drewdavis.live. And it has contact information or booking information. And I'm very flexible with how I like to work with people. I love invitation of, hey, I really need help with this thing. And then I get to work with you to figure out how we do that together. And so if you don't see exactly what you're looking for, I really encourage you to reach out so that we can be in conversation. That's how I work best. And if you're curious about the music, I make it under a stage name, which is Jack, Jack, Dawkins, Dawkins. And it's on Spotify and all the platforms. Just look up that name and you'll see a bald bearded man, which is me. That's where you can find me.
Listen, Drew, thank you. Would you come back? Would you come back and join us again?
I would love to come back. Oh my gosh.
Maybe it can be a storytelling show where you tell us a couple of stories that you have. Maybe rap something too, you know.
Sure.
You know, maybe we could do it together.
Hey, if you want a feature verse, we can make it happen.
Hey, come on, bring it. Listen, we're running out of time. Just want to remind people of a couple of important things. Coming up tomorrow is our Joy Keepers Cafe, which Wednesday, February 28th. You want to go to joykeepers.org/cafe to reserve a seat. It's at 8 a.m. Pacific time in Los Angeles, 11 a.m. Eastern in like places like New York, 4 p.m. GMT in London, and 1700 hours in Copenhagen, however you want to say it. But go check it out. It's absolutely free. Again, joykeepers.org/cafe. Guys, thank you so much for being here. This has been a rousing, fabulous conversation. I love the fact, Drew, that you are giving of yourself. And I think purpose is when your passion is of service and you're providing this wonderful, beautiful service to people that really gets them in a fun way in touch with themselves, and then have them move through whatever trauma, whatever pain, and have them hold on to like happiness and joy and things that they've experienced in their life along the way to transform their lives. So thank you for doing this work. Thank you for doing this work. It's important.
Thank you for giving me a space to share what I do. It's
absolutely. Sheila, as always, my darling, always happy to have you here and sharing your light and love. People can go to Sheila's website at SheilaApplegate.com. Check out, because she's got you guys have some amazing things coming up. Isn't there an anniversary for you guys? Is it Fractal Illumination?
We're on the 10th year of Fractal Illumination, and we have one coming up in April. So there's a discount, 10% discount for the 10th year.
Man, so again, go to SheilaApplegate.com for that. Wow, what an amazing show. I just love it. I love it when it's like this, when we're just like showering people with so many different things. Listen, just want to remind everyone to go check out our social media channels. Specifically, subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can see this show and all of our other Soulivity Today shows in our playlist there, as well as Soulivity TV shows like Consciously Awesome Living and The Steps to Happiness and Tammy's Table. They're all there. You can also go to your favorite podcast provider and listen to and even download all of our Soulivity Today shows. So you want to do that as well. Listen, we're almost out of time here. This is Brian Wesley Johnson saying this is how we do it Monday through Friday right here on Soulivity.com. We're inviting you to listen or even watch us at 8 a.m. Eastern on our Soulivity channels, or you can listen or even watch us at KMET 1490 AM radio out in Southern California for all my West Coast peeps. Anyway, we're out of time, so we'll see you next time right here on Soulivity Today. Bye for now.